everybody, you're listening to and potentially watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
Uh-oh.
Have we lost Caleb already? Oh,
We
no.
lost Caleb Alexander McKenzie. And we are the Comic Book Bears. As we try to get Caleb back, before when we were doing what we call our pre-show, we were having technical problems, so this might be a little difficult tonight. It seems Steve has been having issues for the last half hour with the platform that we use, but we'll do our best. But again, we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in or possibly stream in.
Yes. And normally, like Bill, like you said, we usually don't have problems with StreamYard, but for some reason tonight, it just it's been hating me. It's been hating me big time.
Well, there's a lot. There's so much to hate. Okay, I just got a ping from Caleb. It said I got kicked off, and it won't let me in.
Oh,
So.
Well, yeah, that is not cool. Well, let's try to get him back on, but in the meantime, how was your week?
Busy. I've been very busy after 3.5 years. Is that how long it's been? Wait, 2020, 21, 22, 23. Yeah, about 3.5 years. I started going back into the office in late November. Luckily, there is a satellite office for me that's 3.5 miles away. But it's a change after working from home for so long. It's a change. You're taking a shower and getting dressed and going to work and getting in the car. And, I haven't needed to do that for a very long time.
Being presentable in public. Like
I have to have footwear on, like that kind of stuff.
That's just, that's kind of like what I kind of dread. I mean, I've been working from home since 2017. But I used to pre-pandemic go into the office once a week. So it was like one day a week I had to get on, actual collared shirt and, pants and wear shoes that weren't sneakers. Aha! There we go. We got him back.
Oh, all right.
Tonight is just the night of technical difficulties for everybody. This is wonderful.
So, well, knock wood. I mean, I haven't had any. I've been steady.
Well, I hope you get some wood. I hope you do.
Oh, I always. That's it.
Yeah. You can knock it back and forth.
Today, I had a good hair day.
Well, you did. The Kenny Loggins is strong.
And Instagram kind of blew up. I mean,
the instant grams.
Oh, my public, how they love me.
Well, I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie, if no one else knew that.
How can I move all right, let me just check. This isn't bragging. I swear to God, this is not bragging because I don't really cultivate it too much.
Let's the bragometer is gonna.
I have 25.3 thousand followers on Instagram.
Yep, tap down.
Why can't they watch this? Why can't 10 of them watch this?
Yeah.
Take your shirt off more. I don't know.
Yeah, it's gotta be thirst traps. That's
well. Speaking of taking off my shirt more, which I hope to do, I started chair yoga this week. Holy
chair yoga!
Fuck, that kicks your ass.
What's chair yoga? Elaborate.
It's basically designed for fat guys like me for weight loss, but it's basically all chair bound. But it's leg lifts and arm exercises, stomach crunches, but you're seated.
Okay.
And there's a 28-day program, and then there's subsequent programs, and people kind of use it as the starting pistol, and then when they're in, because one of the issues I have is I'm not physically in enough shape to work out yet. It's don't get old, folks. Just if you're relatively happy with your life at age 53, just find a cliff, and I'm kidding. Sort of.
My,
But I've stuck to it since February 2nd. I think February 2nd was my first day for the 28th because it's leap year. And, I was really tired on the first. So I've been doing that. It's kicking my ass, but I can feel like that, and I don't have to talk about Caleb, that like burn you get in your tummy that's like just under the rib cage, and like it feels good, but the next day it really hurts right there. So there's a lot of that.
Kind of right in there,
man.
Mm-hmm. Right, like
there,
right in that area.
That's why I can't move the 25.3K followers. But if
I'm trying to be paid, like also not bragging. I've got like 2,000 followers on Instagram.
I don't post much, so that's.
But if I did, I have 7
like
million followers.
I've got tens of 11
good for what I got.
Comment on my status.
I had a very good. He's still alive. I shouldn't talk about him in the past tense, but I have a very good friend from college, and he grew up with like a frenemy, and that guy, no matter what Scott did, that guy had to beat him on something, and most of the times it was complete fabrication. Yeah. And there was one time that one of the local papers did an article on his family because there were 5 generations alive, from a recent baby to a woman who was like 84, like his grand aunt or something. And of course, like the friend of me was like, "Oh, I have 6 generations that are."
And that man
and those people are still around. Those people, they still do that garbage.
Oh, dude, the one-uppers, I don't understand it, but anyway.
Yeah. Just don't get it,
Oh, well.
We all know.
Oh, Caleb. Yeah. So, Caleb, how's your week?
Yeah, we talked about our week. Well, I talked. Steve didn't really talk much.
Technical difficulties aside, it's been a very good week. It's just been incredibly busy. It's just been one of those weeks that it's nonstop, constantly. Had a couple of, work is work, right? Like things are going to happen. You improvise, you adapt, you overcome. It's been okay, right? Like outside of work, I did get some bad news this week. We've had a few friends from the unsheltered community that passed away this week. One of them was an older gay man that I knew. I'm not going to call him a friend. I didn't know him that well. Our interactions, he had some mental health problems and stuff like that. Our interactions were not always pleasant. But I did care about him, and I really am sad he passed away. I'm going to try to stay in touch with his husband, who lived outside with him. Who is now going to be able to, transfer inside. He's a vet, so he's going to get a housing voucher and be able to get inside. But it's still heartbreaking, right? And so dealing with that, the community is helping raise money for his funeral cost. It will be next Tuesday. But like I said, I'm not going to pretend like everything was roses. The last interaction with this guy that I had was not good, right? And it's kind of sad and it's heartbreaking. But that's just part of the nature of what we do. But I'm really sad that he's no longer with us. But that's something that we, you sign up for, and you make these human connections and with people who, who are going through a lot, both physically, mentally, and that their health and their health crises are exacerbated by the conditions in which that they are trying to survive. And so that's just the nature of that. And so you love them in a variety of ways while you can, and then you remember them fondly and you keep working after they're gone. So that's where we're at this week. But other than that, man, my 10-year-old, well, he's 10 now, my nephew had a birthday dinner. Got to go see him. We're having a big party for him on Saturday, and just it's been a good but busy week.
I forgot I have a party on Saturday too.
Oh.
Friend of the show, Rob Stager, has an annual party gras, and
nice.
I totally forgot about that on Saturday. Oh, and then I have an invite to a Super Bowl party, but attending it is problematic. So We'll see. We'll see.
I
Super.
am gearing.
I might do like a cameo appearance early. I might do that. That might.
Or you might just do a cameo and then they can play it at the party.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we should get moving into comic books. There actually was one bit of news that I think is something we should chat about.
Yeah.
Caleb is the one that's most ingrained in the original art world. Why don't you take the lead on that and tell us about what we know and what's gone down with Cadence?
Yeah, sure. So if you've been on Instagram and you follow artists and stuff like that, you have probably seen a variety of artists. A lot of artists come up and say, "Hey, I'm no longer associated with Cadence Comic Art." I mean, probably about 50 or 60 big name artists have were represented by a company called Cadence Comic Art. They were probably one of the largest, if not maybe not the most prominent. I think Felix Comic Art is probably the most well known and rakes in the most cash. But Cadence is definitely represents.
Would you agree with this statement that of the two, Cadence was the sexier one?
I don't know, because Felix represents people like Daniel Warren Johnson. They represent people like Felix's company is notorious for like selling out entire issues, right? Like the artists that they represent make bank, and so it depends on, I guess, what your definition of sexy is, because like if you're signed up with Felix, like you're raking in cash. Like we're branching off topic, right? Felix has been instrumental in taking comic art and plugging it into the fine art world. He is not single-handedly, but he has led that ship. And he is the reason why you now have people who are collecting comic art the way that they would collect very, very fine art. It's largely because of him, right? He's a big part of that. Cadence had a lot of artists who did a lot of cool stuff, very big names. And again, they had close to 120 artists on their roster. Something happened. We don't know what, right? Like I'm not gonna go into and try to pretend like I know what happened. I have no clue, right? Something has happened, and that has led to all of these artists to leave. And it's not only artists, right? If you've bought original art from Cadence, then you probably are familiar with Andrew. You're probably familiar with at least one of the other reps that they have. They have also left overnight. Like these were dudes that were ingrained in that company, right? And they left kind of overnight without warning. And about the same time, they lost all his artists. Something's happened. This isn't like when we first started. Bill made a really good point. It's like maybe this is just a company winding down. I don't think that's what it is. I think that there has been. Again, I don't want to speculate because I'm not going to be that guy, right? I don't want to assume the worst. I also think it's very obvious that something bad has happened. But I think it is notable that all of the artists seem to be giving a very, very what I would call canned response. You know, we have left comics. We have left Cadence Comics Art. We are not represented. If you have questions about me, talk to me. If you have questions about art that you are owed, we have nothing to do with that. You need to talk to Paolo and that crew, right? It really feels like maybe this response was written by an attorney or somebody else that's saying, "Hey, keep your mouth shut. This is what you say." So,
the only artist I've seen that's diverted from that a little bit is Aaron Cooter.
Yeah,
and that diversion was just a little more breezy.
Yeah,
but still got the same points across about contact them. Don't know what's up yet. Yeah.
And if you know Aaron, that was like, you can just read that post in Aaron's voice, right? Like, which Aaron's, I'd call Aaron a buddy. He's somebody, if we see, he knows my name, I know his. We say hi to each other. He's an Arkansas dude, so
he is.
Yep, lives up in Northwest Arkansas.
I did not know that.
Yep. He lives up in Fayetteville, which I will be up there in that area in 2 weeks. I may try to go hit him up, see if he wants to grab a drink. Really good dude. But yeah, so we don't know what's happened. Again, this is people's livelihood, but folks like Tyler Crook are no longer there. I think Tula Lotte was repped by them. I mean, like there was just a who's who of Aaron Cooter, a who's who of artists that did amazing. My buddy Kelly Williams, another Arkansas guy, no longer with them. So this is big waves, but I think it's interesting to me how tight-lipped everything is being, especially in the comics world, right? Like rumors get out, people talk about things, everyone is being tight-lipped. Like there's a Reddit thread that insinuates that some stuff is going on. Again, speculation, but like I've never seen the comics world have something this impactful.
Yeah.
And it be like Rich Johnson couldn't get anything.
Yeah, I was gonna say, especially when you have outlets like Bleeding Cool and Cartoon Cafebi that are pretty honest about things and pretty finger on the pulse beat about certain things. Not a lot.
The beat couldn't get anything.
I mean, you know, just seeing like Mahmoud Asrar, Zoe Thurgood as well. I mean, Tula Lote was the one that really stood out. Like both Tula and Zoe, I got like the 1-2 punch.
Yeah, and you also saw in terms of the appearances at conventions, the list was dwindling because I imagine that there's financial tie-ins to some of those appearances. I'm sure they'll free back up soon, but for now, there's some people who were scheduled for appearances that right now are not.
Yeah, well, because what happens with all of your bigger comics reps, right? They buy a section of the room, right? Yeah. And they just buy it, and then they bring all their artists in to sit around. Felix does the same thing. And so if they're not repped by them, those artists are now going to have to go find their own. Like they're going to have to pay for their own tables if they want them in Artist Alley. Like they don't have that person doing that for them anymore. So I don't know what's going to happen. It seems like that ship is sunk. I don't think it's sinking. I think it's just sunk. I will be curious to see what comes out of this. You can read tea leaves if you go into some of the comments and the artists are talking back and forth together. They're just kind of saying, "Hey, stay strong." The only way this works is by you guys sticking together. The truth is gonna. So there are things happening. People are talking to each other, but they're not talking to anybody else. And it just overall it sucks, right? It really does. Like for my artist buddies, for the people that for me who they owe me money. So
it's moments like this I'm glad I don't partake.
Because
something like this, it was bound to happen on a small level, just by individual artists. Just where something goes wrong, and they don't deliver, and it might not even be their fault because it may be a middleman involved in basically in charge of shepherding the communication. But I think this is a big news story. I think this is a really big news story, and I think
it's bigger than what we know.
Yeah. And something I said was, a lot of this seemed to go, there was before the original art convention in Florida. What was that, last weekend?
I think so. Yeah.
The weekend, whatever. And
was it Orlando?
Yeah, Orlando.
Yeah.
And it just seems that there was a very it seems everything started after that happened. So
it's within the past like 4 or 5
something
days.
went down there, or some, but it seems more that something came to light there. Because whatever it is, it moved quick.
It did. It moved really fast, really, really fast. Like they just hemorrhaged people, which that means that something had to have happened for it to be a breach of contract, because all of these people had contracts with them, right? And you just don't get to say, "Hey, I'm not going to fulfill a contract anymore." That's not how contracts work.
No.
So whatever this was something that allowed them to feel legally comfortable with saying, "You no longer represent me. My contract is no longer in effect." Done. Right? So that's something.
Yeah. And just also looking at the comments, it seems like there's a lot of Caleb's. It seems there's a lot of people that are owed.
Yeah. Oh, no, there's people who's owed. Like, let me. I paid for a commission about 3 years ago from an artist that lives overseas. I paid about $350 for this thing. I haven't gotten the commission. I haven't gotten a refund, even though I've asked for one. Right? I'll put that on blast. I don't care. Like, it should have been remedied a long time before this, and still hasn't. So that I don't feel bad about that. But there are people who have thousands, if not tens of $1,000s of product out there that they have paid for and not been delivered on. So like there's a lot of people out there in worse. Like I'm upset about it because I mean, look, I paid for this while I was in law school, right? During COVID, like money was tight. This was something that I was going to give myself to make myself feel better. Okay, whatever. Like I'm not going to lose sleep over the money. Would love to have it, but not a big deal. You throw another zero on the end of that, you throw 2 more zeros on the end of that, I'll fight you. like,
Yeah.
like I'm going to show up at your house.
And especially if it has nothing to do with the artists themselves and
Yeah.
but the agency that represents and distributes their art, then yeah, absolutely, the artist is going to want to say, "Hey, not my problem, not my fault. I swear I didn't do it. I
Yep.
feel really bad." But please direct all questions to Cadence right now, and
Yeah.
they'll help you with your inquiry. Yeah.
It reminds me of the toy equivalent with Shocker Toys.
Shocker.
Yeah, they had $30 of my money. I got a T-shirt out of it. They sent me a T-shirt.
I mean, you got a T-shirt,
but I'm out $30. There were retailers that were out like $45,000 of product. So, yeah,
it's too bad. Too
yeah,
bad.
There's a couple of video podcasts on what went down with Shocker Toys. You can just get onto YouTube and do a search. You'll pull them right up. Some wild stories about not delivering on product and selling the prototypes at conventions. I mean,
ooh,
and
they kind of need to keep.
Company just kept getting contracts. It's amazing. They're not delivering product, but these money was coming in somewhere. It's a 2-part video podcast. It's pretty interesting. But so maybe we should transition from something that's not so happy to a book that made me feel really, really great about reading comics. Can we talk about that first?
I think we should. I think that'll be a good one.
All right. I will hold this in my hands. Steve, I know you have a graphic that you can put up. Ultimate Spider-Man #1. This is the relaunch of the Ultimate Universe, written by Jonathan Hickman and with art by Marco Cicchetto. What do you say put him on the map? Daredevil?
Cicchetto? I think I would say Daredevil. That's the biggest title or his most critically acclaimed title that I'm aware of. I think there's somebody other people might argue now there was 1 or 2 other ones, but I think his Daredevil with Zdarsky. I don't know if it put him on the map, but it did send him into the atmosphere, I think.
Yeah. And I have to say that if you've looked at eBay prices, this first print of this issue is going for around $90 right now.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I should be taking better care of this than in my greasy fucking hands, but there it is. But I can talk about the book without holding it. As I mentioned, this is the reboot of the Ultimate Universe. We had the miniseries that took place at the end of last year that kind of reset the Ultimate Universe. One of the machinations that occurred during that miniseries was the Maker, who was that universe's twisted version of Reed Richards.
Mm-hmm.
Manipulated time so that heroes did not become heroes. Spider-Man was never bitten by a radioactive spider. The Hulk was never exposed to gamma radiation. Captain America did not receive the super serum in 1942. And the universe is very different. But it's still Spider-Man's universe. And I mentioned this to, I think both of you, my word for this was remix.
Yeah.
This felt like a really good remix of a song that you already like. And, when the original Ultimate Universe was happening, it brought this vibrant start, re-jump of a lot of Marvel characters. And, I think that the prime examples of that were the Bendis Ultimate Spider-Man, which kicked everything off, and then the Ultimates. This is in that spirit, but it's very different. And one thing I was not expecting with Hickman was, because Hickman is a very cosmic writer, even when he's doing like street level stuff, which he has touched on in the past in secret, in some elements of Secret Warriors and some of his old stuff. There's still like it's a very big palette that he's painting from as a writer. It's very cosmic. This is a very human story, and that's something that Peter Parker deserves. So, as I mentioned, Peter was never bitten by a radioactive spider at age 16. It's 20 years later. He's 36 years old. He's married to Mary Jane. He has 2 kids. He works for the Daily Bugle, and he has 2 direct bosses that he reports to. One is J. Jonah Jameson, who is the publisher, and then there's the city editor, who is Ben Parker. So because he never became Spider-Man, Ben Parker never died. This was my favorite part of Ultimate Spider-Man. J. Jonah Jameson as a nice guy. He's best friends with Ben Parker. He's another father figure to Peter. Peter's going to a memorial service, doesn't have a tie. Jonah takes the tie off of his chest, that he's wearing, and gives it to him to make sure that he doesn't stand out. That was the most wonderful thing. And like I said, a remix. These are the Daily Bugle, Mary Jane, J. Jonah Jameson. These are concepts that we're used to, but they're all through a different light, but it's still Spider-Man. That's the most amazing thing. Now, I think one thing where I internalized this is because, when I started reading Spider-Man, I was a kid, and he was one of the younger characters. He was at the time I was reading him, he had just started college. And now that I'm old, and I'm reading an older Peter. Of course, we've had versions of older Peter, most, specifically in Spider-Girl. But this is based around him. And I think that's what makes this so special. So in this world, as I said, he never got bitten by the radioactive spider, but he's always felt that, there's part of his life that's unfulfilled. With the changes that the Maker brought around, there was a supposed terrorist attack that was engineered by Tony Stark, who died in the terrorist attack, and numerous other people did, including May Parker, and including Norman Osborn and Norman Osborn's wife. So there's a memorial that Ben and Peter and the rest of his family attend. There's a Catholic priest that's giving the eulogy. I wouldn't say the eulogy, but the first convocation in greeting people, and has red hair and glasses on. I wonder who that is. Like I said, these may have been the routes that the characters would have taken otherwise. And we see Harry Osborn. And Peter doesn't know him, but he feels like a connection to him from this very beautiful speech that Harry provided, eulogizing his father, who was probably the most prominent member of New York City social life, who was killed in that terrorist attack. It's a different landscape for the newspaper business right now than even when Caleb was growing up. It's just different, and this version of the Daily Bugle is feeling that as well. They have a new owner named Wilson Fisk. He wants to make changes. Jonah ain't having it, and then later Ben said he ain't having it. So these 2 best friends decide that they're going to start their own news outlet called The Truth. So you have that undercurrent that I think is going to propel a lot of the supporting cast as we go through the first year or so of stories. But at the end of the issue, Peter finds this orb, and it actually was given to him by Tony Stark, who he found was not guilty of terrorism and was, like Peter, supposed to lead a very different life. And at the end, we see Peter, and he needs to make a decision about what he's going to do. And, look at the cover. You think, I think we know where we're headed. This was such a surprise, especially from Hickman. The art was wonderful. Steve, if you want to put up some of the samples that I provided you here, there's Peter with the kids, May and Richard. before MJ comes in, and then I think I provided at least like one or two other slides. Here we see Ben Parker as managing editor. Just the moments between J. Jonah Jameson and Ben Parker, two old friends that work together and have this, truly organic connection. Every page where it was just the two of them talking was wonderful. I would be very happy with like Ben and J. Jonah miniseries of 6 issues where they're putting this company together. The truth. And then I think I provided one more, and there wasn't a lot of action except for one moment where we do see a new Green Goblin. Was that it for the pictures I provided, Steve? I can't hear you.
Yeah, unfortunately, that one didn't come through.
Okay.
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of action shots, and there's one that gives too much away that I didn't want to provide, but this is going to second and third printings. Pick it up. It's wonderful.
I love that.
Absolutely wonderful. And I've been on such a down period with comic books. I haven't been energized by them. I love that I got energized by something and something unexpectedly, because if I'm not, I'm a DC guy over Marvel. I cannot, if the next 11 issues are only a third as good as this one, it's going to be my series of the year for 2024.
Nice.
I absolutely love this. And I know I'm not alone in this. I know there's a lot of people raving about it. And this is one of those situations, it's like, Purple Rain, like the blockbuster album that actually is good, so this is what that feels like.
I love that Roxxon is still the bad guy in this.
Yeah. Like some things haven't
leads
changed,
on the
but
bugle.
the other things are so different. And
yeah.
It also amazes me because when I do say it's not cosmic, it is in one sense, in that Hickman is excellent at world building.
Mm-hmm.
He's just doing it on a much more human, much more, a smaller community level. And it works just as well as anything he did with Infinity and all these, ridiculously space spanning projects he's been involved in the past. He's a great world builder, and you saw it here too.
Yeah, so one of my favorite things about the Ultimate Universe has always been it's basically just a giant what if, right? It's a giant expanded what if universe. And that sounds like, when you think about Hickman and kind of what you're describing is his propensity to write this high concept material. But if you read some of his, if we're talking about East and West, right? Like East of West, yes, it is a high concept thing, but the character development and it is street level in many, many ways. So we know that he has that. Same with, if you read Manhattan Project, right? That's very similar to what you're talking about, like a boots on the ground. And
from a different lens, but Black Monday Murders.
Yeah.
That one too.
So it's neat that he's applying that there. And I'm kind of am glad he's doing that. I've always kind of wondered, and I didn't pick this up. I need to. I'm not going to pay $90 for it, but I need to get it, because I actually think I would really like to see what he does with a singular character, number one, and not a team book, and a down to earth, just kind of. I still consider Pete a street level character. Craig and I had this really great conversation on one of our podcast episodes, where he was like, I don't consider Peter Parker to be a street level character, a hero. And I was like, I think he's the quintessential street level hero. So like, I think that's what I love about him.
He's a street level hero, but he's like Wolverine in that he can step into the other world easily.
Yes. Well, it's swinging into it. Yeah.
And I think in Marvel, the Wolverine for some reason is the other one.
Yeah.
That can do that.
So, and to a degree, Captain America, right? Like,
but more Cap's past,
right,
than his activity, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah,
I think that. Yeah,
but I want to see what Hickman does, and I'm excited about this because, quite frankly, I've kind of, I don't want to say fell in love with, but Hickman as a must buy, to me, it's lost his luster, right? Like,
Hickman, he's had stuff I've skipped.
Yeah, like, and it used to be, it was, if Hickman wrote it, I have to buy it, I have to read it, right? Yeah. Even on Hickman, some of Hickman's X-Men stuff, which everybody loved, right? When he was, there was some of that I was just like, it's not nearly as novel as all you all are like feel obligated to say it is. And then what did we get after that?
We liked it.
No, like Hoxpox, I
I
love, right? And there's a lot of it that's great, right? But there's a lot of it that I was just like, this is just
Yeah.
it's a Hickman retread, but it's a retread of stuff
Yeah.
that Peter David did. Like it's not novel.
Yeah.
But I mean, and after that, what was the last book he did? That was not the
The
new,
magic
like,
thing, I didn't even touch
yeah,
that.
like
Yeah.
I was just like I tried it. I've got the first issue, and I was just like, this is not good.
Yeah, I didn't
So
even bother with that.
I want to check this out because I would like to fall in love with him again. So
Yeah. But it's
I mean,
different.
honestly,
He's flexing different muscles on
Yeah.
this.
yeah.
he needs to.
Which I mean, it's a good, yeah, like you said, it's a good change from orchestrating some massive things. Now it's
Yeah.
he's
And
taking
one
a
thing I
small
have to say
piece
is
of that
I always
massive thing, but it's small.
I'm sorry, Steve. I was totally interrupting you for some reason. I don't know why. I don't mean to be bossy, but it's in my nature sometimes. One thing that I thought that the Ultimate Universe did was it had an effect on the regular Marvel Universe because there was so much vibrancy and so much just so much adrenaline there. I mean, like, you don't get Bendis's Avengers without Ultimate Spider-Man.
True.
You don't get it. It doesn't happen. And I wonder what we'll see, but I like this version of the Ultimate Universe. It's not bogged down in the continuity, which, by the end was really tough to follow.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably a smart move to put the cap on it. But
and it's
everything about this issue worked. And the Jordi Belaire's colors, oh my God, so good. So good.
And it's bringing back the Ultimate Universe, but it's not 1610, right? Am I? Because I've read some of the stuff. Yeah, so it's a different. It's not 1610.
It's 1610, but with the machinations that the maker facilitated.
Okay.
I don't think it's really clear, like, numbering, but it's an Ultimate Universe. I think we're all safe saying that. So.
It's something. It's certainly something.
Okay, so normally we go to a DC book, but we'll wrap up with a DC book because there's two of us that want to talk about that. Caleb has a book that I think both Steve and Caleb both read. So why don't we go over to that? I believe Ryan Stegman is the writer.
He is. So Steggy Steg had something to do with this. So yeah, I did my. I love him. I love Steggy Steg. Well, so actually, that's kind of correct, right? So Ryan Stegman, he helped to draft the story, but he and Kenny Porter wrote the story together, right? So this is one of those books that you have a dual writing team, and usually what that means is somebody came up with the concept, and then the other person took and did the scripting for it and really fleshed it out, right? They don't get into that as far as who did what, but that's kind of where we're at. And the book is called The Schlub, and it's from Image Comics, which, one of the big three. So it's the, still kind of a big name book. Again, written by Ryan Stegman with Kenny Porter. Those two teamed up on it. But for me, the draw and the reason I really tapped into this was because it's drawn by Tyrell Cannon. And this is probably his biggest work to date. I know Tyrell Cannon, again, from the OA market, right? I've got an Ultron that he did for me somewhere in either one of my books or on my wall somewhere. Phenomenal artist, uses Zipatone. And what do I say about Zipatone? I'm a whore for Zipatone. That's just, I love it.
The tone is very zippy. I don't
So and we had Mike Spicer on colors with John J. Hill on this. So what is this book, right? This book, it really focuses on this main character right here, and his name is Roger Dalton. And if I had to sum up Roger Dalton in one phrase, he's a sad sack, right? Like that's the best way to put it. He is a dentist, but he's not like a high-end dentist. His brother and dad, who are also dentists, like they're doing great, making multi-millions, having billboards and stuff. He's like in a strip mall on the corner next to like Billy J's Wing Shack or some shit. And he's just not doing great. He's the kind of guy that, he still talks, like his best friend is his ex-wife and really the only friend he has. Still talks to her on a regular basis. He lives alone. Nobody really cares about him, so it's just, again, kind of a sad sack. He's things have not gone well. He doesn't have a great relationship with his family. It's just kind of rough. He's a schlub. I don't know, like it's in the title. But what works better than to take a character like this and send them straight down the hero's journey, right? Like let's test their metal, let's see what they're made of. And Roger's life changes one day when local Superman analog literally bursts through the door or through his office, just rips into it. And this character, his name is Sirius. We learn that he is from a dimension called Max Terra, and he's like I said, he's a Superman analog. Seems to be an all-around good guy based on the way everybody talks about him. Everybody loves him. He's hyper-powered, seems to have something to do with everything. He leads a team called the Vigilant, or he at least is part of it. I don't know that he leads it, but he's a part of a superhero team called the Vigilant, so they're doing the thing. And in this picture, you also get introduced to the big bad guy, right? This weird Frankensteinian type character whose name is the Worm, right? He is Worm, the Master of Dark. He hangs out in a place called the Necro Dimension because he's mysterious and evilly evil, and of course it's going to be the Necro Dimension that he hangs out in. And these two are like at each other's throats, and they're arch enemies, I think it's fair to say. And there's some history here that we don't get until the middle of the story as to why these two characters hate each other. I think Steve is saying like issue 4 or 5 maybe that we get that. And it all stems from this other dimension, other world that Sirius and the Worm both steal from. Along down the line, kind of what we find out is Sirius. One of the sub themes of this book is daddy issues. Everybody has daddy issues. Roger has daddy issues. Sirius has daddy issues. Worm probably has daddy issues. We don't really know. But we find out that Sirius's dad, who is kind of an all-father type character, him and Sirius don't get along because Sirius left the dimension, right? He's on Earth. He's doing Earth things, and he's not living up to what his dad wanted to do. And again, dad is by all the surface appears to be this benevolent God, takes care of everybody. That's not actually what we find out, right? There's some things in there that we find out part of the history of. And if you look closely at the picture that Steve is showing, Worm is holding an artifact. It looks kind of like a stone. It's a black obelisk, that we see. This thing is it's called the Soul Cradle, and this is your MacGuffin. I think like this is Chekhov's gun. It all kind of hinges around this a little bit, and because what we find out is that Sirius's dad made this, and Worm is not what we see, right? Something has been stolen from Worm, and Worm has done his damnedest to get it back. So what does this thing do? It allows the wielder to take the soul from one body and replace it with another. All of this culminates in this main fight with our schlub, Roger, who is, again, dumpy dentist, not going great, gets tossed in the body of this godlike Sirius, right? And so now you've got somebody who never could get a leg up, never had things worked out for him, never won a fight, never had any chutzpah or any gusto about him. He's now got laser eye beams and can fly and can knock down buildings, and he's expected to be a hero. And on the other hand, you've got this hero who could save the world and everything, who's got to go be a dentist and go to family dinners and talk to his ex-wife and try to maintain and figure out what's going on and can't talk down to people. How does that work? How does that relate? The book does like it is, again, I'm going to use the word novel again, right? It's not treading new ground, right? This is taking the hero's journey in a very pseudo sarcastic way. They're following a formula. It works very well. They walk you down this path and they show you, hey, like not all the heroes are the good guys, and not everybody who's down on their luck are bad people. And sometimes there's some in between, but everybody, your everyday man, right? Your every man has something in them that just needs a little spark, and they can do something heroic. They can do the right thing, right? it leads up with cynicism, but then it breaks that cynicism. I thought it was fantastic. I laughed out loud in several moments. There is a twist at the end where you see that, you know, the people who maybe lived life and had it easy and they had all this leg up and they had a lot of privilege, or so to speak, they're not always going to make the right choice when you know, push comes to shove, right? And I'll let the story go to that in and of itself. You guys should read this. Again, Tyrell Cannon crushes this book. Mike Spicer on the colors is amazing. Everything is just like this. This is from a spread, right? But every panel is detailed. It is kinetic. It is action oriented, right? You get full stories in the background. If you look in the background, there's entire narratives happening back there that just are there, right? There's Easter eggs hidden in there. It's just incredibly well done. The action sequences are fantastic. The designs are great. I can't say enough good things about it. A lot of fun. Ryan Stegman is a great concept man and a great writer. I'm personally not really familiar with Kenny Porter. This is, as far as I know, the first work of Kenny's that I've read, but I want more. I would love to see more of this. It's just a fun romp to me, right? Like, I don't know that this is going to get any like book of the years. It's an amazingly fun romp. And it's the kind of story that I would fall in love with when I was a kid, when I was comics, right? This is big, dumb action, superhero adventures. Heart of Gold meets the hero's journey, man. And I adored it. And Steve, I know you read it. I'd love to know what you thought about it.
So I really enjoy it too. I mean, you know, the big fun plot, you know, where you've got body swap, you've got kind of a jerk who, you know, yeah, he's down on his luck, but he's also not exactly the most pleasant guy in the world.
Right.
Switches body with, switches, you know, minds, I guess, souls, with somebody who's like the most powerful hero on Earth, who's, you know, always basically where, you know, in the center of the action, and has a lot of responsibilities, which, of course, you know, Roger is not one to jump towards. Um, and so it is kind of interesting. You know, here's somebody who now has all the power in the world, but he really doesn't care to use it,
Yeah.
you know, selflessly. And at the same time, you've got this, you know, superhero that's now in this body of like this, you know, as round as he is tall, little, you know, little pocket chubby bear,
Yeah.
which who's fun to look at. But you know, again, like you said, the daddy issues both of them have, family issues both of them have. They have terrible family lives. They have families that hate each other, that hate themselves, that just, you know, the only people that they really fear more than, you know, their greatest enemies are, you know, are the people that they're supposed to be closest to. And of course, you know, Roger's ex-wife, who's his best friend, still has that kind of torch for him, or at
Hmm.
least still cares for him in a way that, you know, she doesn't like seeing how much he's kind of, you know, disintegrated, you know, socially as well as emotionally over the years. Um, and you know, I do like the twist. I think it's a pretty cool twist. And of course, my favorites are the three henchmen
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you meet pretty early on, that that Worm kind of starts working with as a way to get him close to supervillains so that he can kill them and steal their powers, to become more powerful. And these henchmen, who of course are just sort of like, well, we just haven't been paid, man. We just want to get paid, and they, you know, constantly are creating even more havoc,
Yeah.
uh, and more people that are out to get them.
And
Um,
you know, their loyalty is just with whoever's not going to kill them at the moment.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And they, you know, they're a fun little trio. And you know, then eventually when they're hooking up with the vigilantes,
Yeah. Like,
you know, that's the superheroes. It's also a fun little gag. But again, you know, the art, I do have to say, Tyrell Cannon, Mike Spicer in colors. This is the issue 6, the A cover. It is a beautiful wraparound, as you can see, where you have the heroes on one side and the villains on the other side, or at least the, you know, broadly painted heroes, broadly painted villains on the other side. Yeah, there's a lot of ambiguity. You know, who's really a good guy, who's really a bad guy. It's not very clear. Everybody's just very human.
Yeah.
And I like that because even the heroes that you're supposed to be rooting for really aren't that great. And the villains,
Which
hey, there's reasons to pity them, sort of. Maybe, maybe not, because they're also terrible.
No, and I
Um,
think we've reached a point in this type of material, right? You can't write a straightforward, good guy does good, bad guy is evil story anymore because people
Yeah.
don't, and that's one of the things that's worked well for Marvel movies, right? Like they've shown you that hey, every villain is the hero in their own mind, like, and there's something there.
mhm.
I didn't think about it beforehand, but since you said something and you was talking about the henchman, right? This book, from a craft perspective, it really is an exercise in showing foils, right? Like
Yeah,
Roger is a foil of Cirrus to some degree. Cirrus is a foil of Worm. Worm, in some degree, is a foil of Roger. The henchmen are foils of the other superhero teams, right? The book is all about reflectives from a
yeah,
craft perspective, and there's a lot of moving parts in this. And frankly, even like I think it's impressive that they maintained it. They really did
mhm.
deliver on showing the dichotomies, and they did so in a way that remained funny the entire time. Like that was
Yeah.
cool.
And it was funny without being, over the top. I mean, yeah, there's some over the top stuff here, but there are over the top humor with actual,
Yeah,
terrible consequences. I mean, you have these fun, sarcastic moments, but at the same time, people are getting
like
smushed, and
obliterated.
obliterated, and you're like, oh, okay, so like that kind of making fun almost of the banter that you have in a lot of superhero books, especially street level books like a Spider-Man, where like ha ha ha, I'm going to keep things light and funny, but it's like you just dropped a car on like that old lady, like
Yeah,
it's there's some really great stuff in there. But yeah, 6 issues, 6 and done, maybe. At least volume 1. So we'll see if they continue the story or not. Um, but yeah, it's a pretty good 6 issue
yeah.
volume 1. If I do
It
say so.
should be out in trade fairly soon.
Yeah.
Pick it up, get it that way. It's worth digesting all at once. That's the way I read it, even though I read it in issue form. So I hope it did well enough
Mhm.
financially. This team gets to do more stuff together because this was a good little romp.
Yeah, same. I hope it does. I hope it did well. I hope it does well in the collected form, so we can see more.
Oh, muted, Bill.
Didn't do it second time there. I had my mute on. So I think we're gonna head back to Steve for another book
Oh,
he can talk about.
yeah, and I would love for the people who are watching the live stream, I would love to show you a beautiful slideshow. I had some choice images picked out for this. Unfortunately, StreamYard hates it and causes me to get booted off every time I try to load it up. So I'm not going to. So instead, I'm just going to show you. I'll do show and tell with physical copies. So most of you have heard of Distillery, which is a new sort of, I would say boutique indie publishing label. They all have, it's all large format, 64-page books. They're beautiful. They're very beautifully put together. They've really only had a couple titles out. They had they had a distillery sort of sampler, the Devil's Cut, and Bill is going nuts over there. Oh wow,
It was the way you said boutique.
boutique,
Sorry.
boutique.
Welcome to the boutique. Okay. I call my boutique
Um,
distillery. All right.
well, they are definitely like they are
Please
definitely.
resume.
They're really pushing it. It's very it's definitely a premium offering of a publisher. But they only have about 2 books out that are available now. The first, actually, and sort of the Devil's Cut, which is a collection of short stories introducing a lot of these other books. Um, the first one that was put out, the first series, was Gone by Jacques, and now we have Somna, put out by co-creators Tula Lotte and Becky Cloonan, and they do both the story and art as well as some of the colors. Tula Lotte on the colors here for some of these uh, sections of the book, and it's actually a really clever way of doing it. They actually split the art duties through the story. So the book essentially is about a European, maybe 1600s, 1700s. It's during witch trial, the witch trials in Europe, in Central Europe, where the main character is just the wife of someone who's the local law enforcer, but also who happens to be the witch finder for the town. And she has a little bit of a secret, which is she has been having visions while she dreams of something that kind of seems to be very much like a sleep paralysis demon. This dark, shadowy figure with long claws, but seems to have a not so much a terrifying effect on her, but a kind of sensual effect on her. She starts making noises that her husband has never heard her make before that seem distressful, but let's just say Tula Lotte does a very good job of smutty presentation here.
Probably
Of
just gas.
probably just gas. I mean, her mouth is in that position because she's trying to yawn, but can't really yawn that much. It's very, very beautiful, and also very, very sensualized. But of course, when she wakes up, then Becky Cloonan takes over the art duties, and it's a very much like Becky Cloonan style, very cool, medieval, with a lot of great splash pages and full like landscapes, as a way to sort of illustrate how this village looks and how the people are very sort of medieval peasant. But every time that the main character slips into sort of a slumber, a sleep state or a dream state, she gets sort of pulled back in with this demon and starts interacting with this demon a lot more. And of course, the demon's really doing his best to seduce her, and make her realize that, here she is, sexually unfulfilled. Her husband's always busy doing other things, and she has needs. And unfortunately, this is not the time, the place, the era where you have a woman who has needs, and can get them fulfilled, especially through a demonic presence. It's probably not the best time for that to happen. But lots of other really cool things going on. There's a plot with her friend, who's having an affair with with a local woodsman, that also kind of pulls into play sort of her own internal guilt and her fear, and also drives her towards this sort of demonic presence who also is showing her sort of more sexually freeing and fulfilled way of life.
You gotta watch out for those woodsmen, man.
Yeah, the woodsmen are kind of whatever. This one kind of looks like maybe not so much a threat. This particular woodsman, he seems, yes, sure, he can swing an axe, but he's also kind of whiny and needy. So
so he
don't wanna
wouldn't
give
be out
away
of
too much.
place in a boutique.
He would be manning the manning the register in the boutique. But I mean, there's some beautiful, beautiful works here by Cloonan, on her sections of the book. Just a
Mhm.
lot of detail. This is her in a church, and then of course, every time you have Tula, there's certain things I cannot show on Facebook Live, unfortunately. But you know, just the gorgeous way that Lotte sort of makes this, almost look like, and probably is watercolors of a sort.
Yeah, she
Um,
paints her stuff. So
just almost photorealistic at times, and other times covered with sort of like a smokiness. That
was that like a
sort of
demon
adds that.
bukkake?
No, she's in water.
Oh, okay.
She's in a bathtub.
So now that
Um,
you showed that, is that in Black Label size?
this is it's what's the measurement? I'm terrible with that measurement. It's basically like the Black Label premium size
Yeah.
books.
And
Pain in the ass to get a plastic, to get a sleeve for it, but
all of Distillery's books are they're that
yeah,
size.
are this
So
size.
yeah.
And of course, they have multiple covers because it's Distillery and they have a lot of really cool artists that do their stuff. But the main A and B covers are always Becky Cloonan and Tula Lote. I pick up Tula's just because I love her art. But I also love Becky Cloonan's art, and if I had an extra $9 per issue, I would get hers too. But unfortunately, I only have enough room in my heart and wallet for one copy of each issue.
Steve, refresh my recollection. Did you read Barnstormers, the book that Tula did with Scott?
Did.
Snyder? Yeah,
I did. Absolutely loved it.
I knew we had spoken about it. I just couldn't remember.
We talked about it on the show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a gorgeous book, and just in that book, that very much I'd say the style is still Tula Lote, but because it's a little bit more modern, it takes place in the 20s, I think. She's able to sort of change the lines, change the way that her characters are presented. This is very interesting because not only is it very medieval, so there's a lot of ripped bodices and flowing skirts and things like that, but there's also a lot more nudity in this book. This is not for kids. There's some full-on hanky-panky.
Not hanky-panky.
The hanky-panky. I mean, you guys know I love my comic smut. Maria love it. I've got everything Maria love it does. It's so smutty. She has to sign her name on every page. That Maria Lote.
Yeah.
But Tula Lote here, and Becky Cloonan too. She's also not shying away from the more adult aspect of this story. But it's great. I cannot wait. It's a 3-issue series, and then there was a sort of the prequel short story in the Distillery Devil's Cut anthology. So definitely recommend it. It's kind of like a gothic romance meets hellish exorcist / witch trial kind of book. So little fairy tale-ish. But yeah, I recommend.
I've heard good things. I've heard really good things.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I can't wait for the 3rd issue. So it's definitely something I recommend to everyone who is over 18
and boutique-ish.
and boutique who would like to go to a comic boutique
and say, "I want that autistic statement in my hands."
Wrap it up for me, gentlemen.
All right, we got one more book to talk about. I'll lead it, but Steve also read it, so he'll chime in. I mentioned Black Label before, and not every Black Label book is in the Black Label format that we just saw. And I also did one of my brain farts, too, because I mentioned that Jordi Belair was doing colors on Ultimate Spider-Man. I was wrong. The colorist on Ultimate Spider-Man is Matthew Wilson, but I did have Jordi Belair. Yeah, I did have Jordi Belair on the brain because he did the colors for the wonderful John Constantine Hellblazer Dead in America. Now you'll see here that there's the trade dress of Sandman Universe, but there's also the trade dress of DC Black Label, which means it's not necessarily tied to continuity, but if they dig it, it stays. And those two pieces of trade dress don't matter because we all know it should be saying Vertigo. And this book is Vertigo as fuck.
Yes.
Now, there was a Hellblazer series that started in 2019 that I think made it to very early 2021. It was about, what was it, Steve? About 20 issues or so?
Sounds about right. Yeah.
That was written by Simon Spurrier with art by Aaron Campbell, and this is the same team. And right as of now, it's an 8-issue series, but they don't do the one of anymore in case there's Boffo sales like Poison Ivy and some other success stories. And it basically basically picks up right where that series left off. John Constantine is wanted for murder in the United Kingdom. He travels to the United States. He has his friend Nate and his son along with him traveling the States. Steve, if you can just put up some of the graphics, especially the first one, which is the first page where there's the skeleton that is just hanging in there. We don't know exactly who that is. It may be John, it may not be, but then the next page shows you where they are, and it's in Los Angeles. But here's some other. You can just go through some of the other examples here. Some of his encounters. One of the minor plot lines was looking in Florida for the Fountain of Youth. So there's people that he encounters there, and then Steve, you go to the next.
Actually,
one.
before we move on for the Fountain of Youth, it had one of the best lines
Oh,
where
please.
he's talking to a demon, and he's like, "Of course, I know it's not the actual Fountain of Youth. It'd be filled with nothing but drowning babies."
Yeah.
You're right. Just be
And
terrible
then
as that may
if we
seem.
could just show that next image here.
Oh, yeah.
Which I just think this is just masterful storytelling. But let's go through what goes down in here. So he's in the United States, and there's something off about everything. And one of the entities he encounters while he's on the run is Dream from the Endless. It's the Sandman. And they have a conversation which harkens back to, a bit of John Constantine's involvement in the original Storyman arc. And there's a few lines there that just put some question marks over, like, did they just sweep everything up and it's something new? Like, wow, shades of Ultimate Spider-Man. It very much is the case. John is in America, but it's not the America he knew. John is in the Sandman universe, and it's not the Sandman universe that he knew. And he is going to basically enlist some of his contemporaries, some that he hasn't treated so well. And John's not in a great place either. He may be dead. He hasn't heard his heartbeat for 3 weeks. His skin is getting brittle. He may be dead, but is still alive for some reason. So he's going to contact who else? Swamp Thing. But he hears the voice of Alex Holland, and this entity does not recognize who John Constantine is, who Alex Holland is, yet it's a being of the green, and that's where we leave things off. And
Yeah.
I just love, as a first issue, this worked so well because it just brought you in. I mean, they had a lot of ground to cover with John's leaving the United Kingdom and then coming to the States, and some of the adventures, it's a terrible word, but some of the things that happened to him when he first came here and where he is now. But the landscape that this provided for a first issue, it was just, I mean, Simon Spurrier, he's a really economical writer. He has a way of just making sure that there's, I don't want to say bang for your, it's weird to say this, but bang for your plot. He gets a lot of plot in there in a very, very surgical way, and I was so impressed with this. Really like this.
Well,
Steve,
it was really interesting. I like how you put that with Simon's very, he's very economical. He's very
like I said, surgical. It was
surgical.
It was. He had a lot to stitch up, and he did it with precision.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And actually, what was very funny. So, page 1 is the page we saw where there's a rotted corpse that's climbing up a hill, and then of course the second page he's climbing up the hill with the Hollywood sign. But on the next page, it's essentially a summary of the last series. Why am I here? But it's done in the voice of John Constantine, the very, sort of cockney, brutish, profane way that he has of just talking about himself and other people. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I get like musical cues when I read. And Baba O'Reilly started playing in my head when I was reading the summary. It was just sort of like, I bet you're wondering how I got here. That kind of thing, just like in my head while I'm reading the magic's like life, and it's just so perfect. And I'm really curious if Simon, like some other artists, like or some other writers like Jeff Lemire, if they do have a particular soundtrack when they're writing a book.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the way that they encountered Sandman, and we're talking about Daniel, the Daniel version of Dream here, opening up that old sort of original meeting between Sandman and Constantine that happened back at, what is it, issue 5 of Sandman?
It's before Doll's House.
Yeah, it's like 5 or 6,
It's
maybe.
got to be in.
Maybe,
It's got to be
even
in the Preludes and Nocturnes. It's got to be in there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Because it's it's basically all around the Dream Sand, and Constantine's ex-girlfriend who had gotten the Dream Sand, and
Was it?
you put it pretty well, Bill. In that it really does sort of draw into question, like, hey, yeah, this happened, but this other thing that you don't know about that we've never really talked about also happened, and guess what? That's going to be the plot of the story. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that was one of the Sam Keith issues, wasn't it? So
Yes, it was.
It had to have been in the first 6.
Yeah. It was Preludes, because it was when he was trying to gather his his different
I remember that being Sam Keith.
objects. Yeah. So this was a very early story. But I think it's great because it ties into that, and then of course, with him going to try and talk to the Swamp Thing. That again is one of the first times we ever saw John Constantine back in Alan Moore's Saga of the Swamp Thing. So I mean, this is just it's definitely a retread of things that define the modern John Constantine based on all of his Vertigo and pre-Vertigo stuff. But I think it's all been twisted and pulled and turned on its head. And I wonder if there's going to be a Zatanna, if Zatanna's going to show up in this, but it's going to be a very different kind of Zatanna than the one that we saw with the New 52 Constantine, Dark Justice League Dark and all that.
And I just love how this kind of attacks the worst of America in there. I mean, Swamp Thing is a golf course.
He's a golf course.
He's a golf.
He goes to Florida, and it's a golf course.
And it's just so twisted, but so beautifully twisted. And just also some of Constantine's lines to Ponce de Leon about being a drama queen. I mean, there's just so much in here, and it's so well woven. And I'm really excited about this. I'm really excited for this series where I could, I was like, oh, that's nice. Spurrier's back on the Hellblazer. I'm getting it anyway. But this was really, really good.
Well, and the fact that it's Sandman. So that's the other thing. Simon Spurrier has written Sandman before, but through the Dreaming, through the Dreaming books. And this feels like Simon Spurrier doing a Neil Gaiman. And the other thing that also hits me about this is that there's traces of American Gods in this, with him going on basically a pilgrimage across the America. There are forces here that are, and not to spoil anything, but Daniel does say, Dream does say,
very much.
There
I
are
wasn't even
entities
about
here.
that.
Yes, there are entities here that have powers, that have abilities. I'm not scared of them, but they don't need me. Which means that there's some forces that exist here that could fall in line with like what Gaiman did with the American Gods. So I love everything that's being thrown in this book. I'm like, it's Constantine as the main character of a Sandman or American Gods book.
Yeah.
So yes, can't wait until issue 2 through 8 through etc.
Well, yeah. Spurrier says he has enough stories for he would love to get to 38 issues.
Oh yeah.
So if this goes to 28 and then another, he says he has things planned out for 38 issues. But I'm just so happy with this because some of the, let's face it, some of the Sandman Universe books have kind of been, they start off well and
kind of sleepy.
Yeah. A little bit.
And with Constantine too, he's had some rocky couple of years. Since the New 52, when they brought him into sort of the main continuity of the DC universe, taking him out of his element. But then even when they started bringing him back in, like it's almost like easing him into being Vertigo again. Like it was very interesting, sort of the transition away from Vertigo-ish to back to Vertigo-ish, and
also. Talking about just going back to the art though, I think it's cool that Aaron Campbell. So this Aaron Campbell's he's got a range as far as an artist goes, right?
Yeah.
This looks more like something like some of those panels you're showing. He's pulling out some like Andrea Sorrentino vibes, which I haven't seen him do before. Especially in that's very Andrea Sorrentino. In the way that he works that. So I've never really seen him do that before. That's impressive.
Does Jordi color Sorrentino?
Some, yes, I believe so. Dave Stewart does most of it, I think.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Like Dave Stewart, Dave Stewart did Tenement. Dave Stewart did the Black Barn book, and I can't think of the name. I'll think of it later.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Gideon Falls?
Gideon Falls, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like we had 4 really good books to talk about tonight.
Yeah.
Happy with that.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we're going to move on with the show. We're getting into our final segments. And before we get to our final segment, we talk about some things that we got over the week that we call Geek Gets. I have a very strange one, but whoever wants to start, please do. I'll go last.
I can start first, and I just want to sort of point out. I know it's kind of hard to see; it's pretty far away because I have such a massive office. But the poster that I picked up this month is actually the cover for DC Power 2024, which is the Black History Month special. That contains several stories, lots of really great, short stories featuring prominent Black and African American characters in the DC canon. And this art here is by Chase Copley doing the cover, but there's 100 pages. If you do get the actual one shot itself, it's 100 pages, about I think 8 different stories. Pretty cool. It's features quite a few characters in there for the DC universe. So they do a really good job when they have their special issues. I'm always a big fan of their Pride Month special issue. And this is also a very cool issue itself. So, and this is the poster for it.
All right, cool. Over to Caleb. What do you got there?
All right, I've got a couple things, so I'll go fast. First and foremost, I picked up the Volume 2 of the Incredible Hulk Omnibus, which has works by the great Roy Thomas, Marie Severin, Herb Trimp, and of course, Stan Lee. Super excited about adding that to my collection. I got this gorgeous box set of the Sumerian, which, huge company. So all 4 hardcovers in this, which means I have the first 2 hardcovers I have duplicates of. Mason, I know, Bill, you're not a Conan fan. Mason and Steve's Way. So he can read some of it. Great stuff. The art is beautiful.
He doesn't read Conan.
I have read Conan in the past. Yes. None of the Marvel stuff though, but
I've read more Conan than you have.
Oh, right. I've also played Age of Conan, so I'm even more engrossed in it. I've spent 300 hours building towers.
All right.
I added to my Mastodon catalog. Got this gorgeous thing in the mail. So this is a copy of the Once More Around the Sun album. Beautiful album. Great cover art as always. And then last but not least, and just delivered today, I got new running shoes. Fancy dancy Noble running shoes, which is great because I just signed up for a 10K next month and I need to get back to running more. So, running shoes. So those are my Geek Gets.
Yeah. Ooh. Good luck with that. I've never been an endurance runner. I was a sprinter on the track team. I ran first heat in the 200 and second heat in the 100. But we used to have a run called the Demarest where we ran through like 4 towns. I died. And that's when I was in shape. I've never been an endurance runner. I have so much respect for people like Wendy and everybody else that does it. I just can't do it. I never could.
So I'm not number one, yes, respect to endurance runners, folks that do marathons and stuff like that. I've never done anything like that, but I want to make like this is my first just actual race. Whenever the weather's good, I regularly run like 8 to 10 miles about 3 or 4 times a week, and just the track I go. So 10K is roughly 8 something miles. I'm not worried about getting to complete it. It's just my first race. So but it's the first time I've raced something, so I'm kind of excited about it. I would like to do a marathon at some point. I would love to do an Ironman if I can ever get in that kind of shape at some point. I've on my birthday like 2 years ago, I did a self-pushed half Ironman in one day, so which was a bitch, but I digress.
So it's swimming pool, skateboard, and then run around the aforementioned pool. That's the half Ironman, right?
Close.
And then use repulsorays.
In the boutique.
In the boutique.
Okay. I have a variety of Geek Gets, but they're all from the same company and the same thing, essentially. If you go to the clearance racks in your Walmart, they have discounted some of the Spin Master figures considerably. So I got a few Flash figures for $2.
Ooh.
And I only had the only one that I had previously in this packaging was Dark Flash, but I got some, and of course, like you can't find the women, so you couldn't find Supergirl from this series, and you also couldn't find Mira from the Aquaman series. But I got a series. I got basically the whole set from except for Mira for $1 each.
Nice.
Oh wow, that's great.
And I can't imagine what people who do customs are going to go through right now, because when you have figures like Orm and Arthur, there's so many things you can do with in repurposing these. So I imagine people are going to go crazy on that. And I also
they're good sculpts. They're really nice sculpts.
Very good sculpt. Like I said when I first talked about them, for a mass market toy, the Spin Master movie stuff has been pretty good. And I also got the Aquaman versus Black Manta set, which has the submersible sub and these 2 figures. You'll see here it says clearance $17. It rang up as $6.50, where it previously was a $29.99 list price. So so it's got a lot of bargains. There's still one I need to get, and it's a Target exclusive. The Aquaman Sunken Citadel set of 4 figures. So if you see this at your local Target and it's like below $10, you swim his ass up to the counter. I'm good for it. But I do need to get that. But
well, speaking of boutiques, I do often hit up the Chez Target boutique.
Yeah. So there you go. Those are my Geek Gets. All right, we're going to wrap this show up. When we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears up, we do so with this segment we call the Woofs of the Week. In the bear community, if you find a fella attractive, you woof at him. And we do something very similar. We woof at something which may be a comic book, maybe comic book related, but it also may be a film or a TV program or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
My woof of the week, and I may have mentioned it very briefly before, but it was just starting at the time, is the new sort of late show After Midnight with Taylor Tomlinson. I love Taylor Tomlinson. I love her stand-up, and I was really excited when she got the show. It is not like the other late-night talk shows in that it is not a talk show. It is very similar to a mashup of a UK panel show / game show, where the guests are all comedians. Points are given that make no difference on the actual game itself, that are just kind of useless and silly. And of course, it's filled with ridiculous games. I think it's hilarious. There's been some really amazing guests. I know it's not for everybody. It is mostly improv, and it takes a lot of the inspiration from crazy internet trends and TikTok stuff and all of that. But you've got some great guests like Wendy McLennan Covey, Bianca Del Rio, John Gabris, just a lot of really great comedians and actors are sort of making an appearance on here. Natasha Leggero and her husband were both on at the same time, which was great. But yeah, I mean, it's just fun, and there's a lot of really great interaction. And I think Taylor is half the time she gets sidetracked by how funny something can be. So it's fun to watch. I think you'll really enjoy it, and it is available in Canada, so you can watch it on CBS in the US, and I think CTV in Canada or on Paramount Plus.
All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your woof of the week?
All right, my woof of the week goes out to a podcast this week. I did that just for you, Bill. Put some gusto into it. The podcast that I have kind of fallen in love with today, actually, this is a brand new thing. It's a podcast called Songcraft. It's a spotlight on songwriters. It's hosted by Scott B. Bomer and Paul Duncan. Now, how I found this is I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw a post that Duff McKagan made, a bassist for Guns N' Roses fame. And so he was like, "Hey, go check out this episode of this podcast that I did." And I'm like, "Okay, sure, why not?" And what it is, this podcast, these guys are amazing, right? Like they just go and they interview all of these incredible songwriters and people who are in bands that talk about their writing process. And it really is that. It's not just, "Hey, let's talk to you and you tell us about this tour." Right? They get into the nitty gritty of like process and writing songs. And it's not just people like Duff McKagan and Guns N' Roses, right? These like they have interviews with Natalie Merchant where they get into how she wrote the song "Kind and Generous." Paul Stanley from Kiss, Bill Withers, they did an episode with him. Smokey Robinson, Robert DeLeo of Stone Temple Pilots, Jerry Cantrell, Ann Wilson does an episode. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis talk about writing "What Have You Done for Me Lately?" Like I think that's awesome. Andy DeFranco and Bill, just for you. Elvis Costello did an episode where he talks about writing "Every Day I Write the Book." I have not listened to that episode yet. It's very much on my list. I listened to 3 episodes today, right? There's old school country writers like Loretta Lynn did an episode with them. They really get into talking about the craft of songwriting and the process that these amazing people went through to write these hits. They do a fantastic job with it. Go check it out. I listen to it on Spotify. I'm sure it's available all the places that finer podcasts such as Comic Book Bears are around. So you should be able to find it if you found us. But check out Songcraft, spotlight on songwriters.
Very nice. Now, some of the people you've mentioned are no longer with us, like Loretta Lynn and Bill Withers. How long has this cast been around?
They have 200 and some odd episodes. I don't know the frequency with which they release their episodes, but they had like the one with Duff was like 230 something, I believe, of the episodes that they've done. Yeah. And it just, man, I could like, I barely scratched the surface with the people that they've interviewed. 223 was the most recent where Duff McKagan goes on there. And he talks specifically about the writing of Civil War, but he also talks about the writing of a ton of other stuff and how they went into it, including some of his like solo band stuff, right? Like not just GNR, writing songs on his new independent albums and stuff like that. Just how he sits down and writes a song is really fun to listen to. And he's incredible. Like, and he's brilliant. Like that is the dude is whip smart. So.
Yeah. Okay, cool. You'd be surprised like how few music podcasts I listen to.
Well, it's not every day that I like have something music related that you haven't heard of or listened to. And so when I asked you about
to the Raconteurs, and for videos, I regularly watch the What's in the Bag from Amoeba.
Yeah.
I like those a lot, but
sometimes that's our buddy Ray that does that.
Yeah. He does filming.
Yeah, he's part. So he's the manager of Amoeba Berkeley. So some of those that What's in the Bag is he's filming those.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of those. I mean, some of the musician choices just surprised the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Like Hugo Burnham, the drummer from the Gang of Four, selected a Creedence Clearwater Revival album. I mean,
nice.
You don't expect some stuff, and It's pretty cool. Well, my Wolf of the Week is also music oriented. And the Grammys is not known for great performances. Let's be honest.
Fair.
Sometimes the acts like just get through it. But we had a very, as far as I was concerned, a very good program this past Sunday. But I have to signal out for my Wolf of the Week, the duet between Tracy Chapman and Luke Combs of Fast Car.
Absolutely.
Luke Combs had a very faithful, to the point where he wasn't even changing gender in the lyrics, a very faithful cover that was a hit this year. There was a hit through the summer of 2023. I'm still writing 2023. I don't know how you are doing it. And this is the first time they performed it live together. And there was something very special about an African-American out lesbian woman who's middle-aged and a younger white cis male from the South singing the song about belonging. And, it's like with everything going on in the States and how fucked up everything is, for 4 minutes, it felt like, we're going to get through this, like it might be painful and there might be a lot of pain, but there is something inside of us that's going to push us through this. And again, with this song about, specifically about being an outsider and finding belonging and finding your voice. It's just, I think it's going to be just going to go down as a legendary moment for music.
Overcoming homelessness. Like that song means a lot.
Yeah. And I must have watched that at least 60 times already.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah. So there you go. That's my Wolf of the Week. Oh God. There's nothing wrong with being a drama queen sometimes. All right. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the X and the Blue Sky and the Instagram and the Threads as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to write to us, you can do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you want to listen to us, you can do so through Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and all the others. And if you were joining us tonight through Facebook Live, we appreciate it. If you were watching us later through our YouTube channel, thank you. Please like and subscribe and leave a good review because we like that kind of stuff. And we'll be back in 2 weeks. Until that time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
If you're listening to the audio version, you're going to hear a wolf and an explosion. We'll be back again in 2 weeks. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.